Right, welcome to podcast number 2 of Oz Soundz Unleashed. My name's Plummer. I'm the host of the Oz Soundz Unleashed podcast, and it's a podcast that talks about indie or music and audio issues right across the industry. Today I'm absolutely pleased to be joined by Stewart Robertson, one of my good friends and a drummer from about 30 years worth of experience. Welcome to the show, Stu.
Thank you, mate. How are you?
I'm really well, man.
30 years sounds a long time.
It does, doesn't it?
It feels like about three weeks or something.
So we've got a fair bit of experience, you know. You more so in the music than I do, more in the business. But, you know, when we met, we first had some really good discussions around your musical history, your background, some of the bands you
Hope I didn't
in.
just throw it out too quick.
No, I don't think so at all, mate. I don't think so at all. This is just an interactive session. I'm interested in your background and stuff. Why did you choose drums in the first place? What stage did you play in?
Yeah, I guess anything that I ever did with music or do now or will do in the future, for me it all started with the Stones. We always listened to music in the car driving around, like my dad played Neil Sedaka and this sort of stuff. So I was listening to music a lot, but I was never particularly into any of those things. But I can't remember how, but I heard some Stones and I just did a deep dive and never really came out of it. So by the time I was about 9 years old, it sounds a bit embarrassing to say, but by the time I was about 9 years old, I had 40 Stones albums. And I don't think there were 40 Stones albums then, but you could borrow them from the library. So I borrowed them and I copied them, and best ofs and compilations and the actual albums. And I just did an enormous deep dive into them. So I just wanted to be in that music. I didn't want to be in music, and I didn't want to be one of the Stones, but I wanted to be in the music, and I didn't quite know how. And so then as, you know, I got a little bit older, I went into other bands and all that sort of stuff, but maybe when I was 14, I heard Metallica for the first time, and it completely blew my mind, and I sort of thought, look, it's now or never, which is crazy to say when you're 14. Yeah. But I felt like it. I felt I got to play something, and I dabbled in guitar and some other things. And couple of guys in my year were into metal as well and learning guitar. So we went over to one of the guys' house, a guy called John, and he had this little sort of rehearsal room set up at the back of his house where he would play guitar and his neighbour would play drums not really on even drums, but we went over there and he said, well, you play that while I'm playing guitar. And I thought, okay. And I couldn't play drums straight away, but I could sort of do something, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So what attracted you to the drumming though, in the first place?
I think a combination of things. I think a combination of I needed to play and I needed to play in a band and I needed an instrument to do that. And that experience made me think, oh, maybe I can play drums. And I quite like that. And then probably analysing myself a bit, I'd played a lot of sport, especially cricket, but a lot of sport. And in cricket, I was the wicket keeper. And in wicket keeping, there's only one of you. You have a perfect view of everything. You give advice to the captain. And so you're sort of an unsaid leader, even though you're not necessarily the captain. And that felt like what drums were to me. And then, actually, I found out years later, a very famous New Zealand wicketkeeper, Ian Smith, wrote an autobiography, and his autobiography was called The Drummer in the Band, because he sort of thought that from a wicket-keeping point of view.
Very cool.
So, and I guess I could do it as well. And then, once you start something, any instrument, it becomes your instrument, and you learn more, and you learn how it interacts with everything else. And I just loved it. Mine
was a little bit different coming into the music. I won a scholarship with Newcastle Conservatorium to play tuba as a kid, in infants. And so I won that like 5 years in a row. I studied under a bloke called Reed Fischler at Newcastle Con. Joined Newcastle City Concert Band. So my introduction to music was more around the concert bands and the brass instruments and things like that. And, you know, luckily my kids have followed footsteps into the music industry. I understand you've got a very interesting story, which we'll hold for later, about Metallica, because I think the listeners will really love that. So, you know, how did you approach starting to learn to play? Like, you know, you're in this garage or whatever it is, music studio, and you've got the quasi drum kit. And,
yeah.
You know, how did you go about it?
Well, I guess I went home and went, right, that's what I want to do. It's sort of it was a real light bulb moment. I'm going to play drums. So actually, I went back to that same guy and said, I want to play drums. Like, how do I do it? I don't know why I asked him for advice. He was my age and a guitarist. But he said, well, actually, 3 doors down the road, there's a guy in the year below us who's a really good drummer, and he's selling one of his drum kits. Do you want to buy it? So I went over there with him, and, I bought his really cheap kit. It was a Gretsch kit, I think, which actually make motorcycle helmets.
And some really decent guitars these days.
Yeah, some really good ones. Or was an Aria maybe? So I got that. It was all bits and pieces and stuff. Like, I didn't even have a snare stand. I put the snare on a tennis racket and held the other end of the tennis racket on a seat with some weights on it. So, and then I sort of built it up over time. So that's how I started. But then the biggest problem I had initially was, well, how do you set up a drum kit? And so you look at pictures, you go, okay, set it up, which is essentially you're slightly facing with your right side of the body because you're playing with your right leg and you're playing hi-hat with your right hand. And if you go across the toms, you're going left to right. So you've got to lead with it. And I realised playing, oh, hang on, that's right-handed and I'm left-handed. So I was playing with my non-dominant foot and mainly my non-dominant hand. And every time I wanted to do a tom fill, I wanted to lead with the wrong hand, which would have been very difficult. You can't lead a tom fill really with your left hand if you're going left to right. You've got to lead with your right. So I had to make a really key decision, which is, am I going to turn my drum kit around and actually play left-handed, which is what I should do because I'm very left dominant, or so I decided I won't do that. I'll leave it right-handed and I'll learn to play right-handed. And that was hard at first because I'm doing everything non-dominant. I had to train myself to want to go with my right hand rather than my left. And that's mucked up for my life, my left and rights, because I can't... I think you remember your dominance by, I do this with this foot, so that's my... Oh, no, that's my wrong.
So would you still do that again today if you had that same choice? Or would you turn it around and play the natural left-handed?
Yeah, I've thought about that, actually. I think on balance I probably would, because the idea was if I ever turn up and there's a drum kit, it's not going to be left-handed, it's going to be right-handed. But then I look back at all the different times I've jammed with people and all this sort of stuff, which is quite a lot really. I don't think I've ever turned up and used someone else's drum kit. It's always been mine. So maybe I could have just done it.
Maybe you could have, mate. Absolutely. So let's get into when was the first band? What was it called? Was it that band that was in the garage or the training room, or was it something different?
I guess I thought it was going to be that because those two guys in my year that play guitar, we jammed together a bit. Mainly bits of Metallica songs we could sort of play, or bits of Slayer songs we could sort of play. And then the main guy already had a drummer. So just for fun and because I like music, I would go to their rehearsals Friday afternoon after school, and I'd sometimes play if the other guy couldn't play. And we'd jam at our house a bit. But the first real band I was in was a band called The Silence, and I got into that in a very strange way. I practiced in my bedroom. There were 3 other drummers within about 100 metres of me, so sometimes all 4 of us would be playing at once. So the neighbourhood must have loved that. And one day there was a knock at my door, and I opened it, and it was a guy called Brent who lived around the corner. And he said, "Hey, you play drums?" I went, "Oh, yeah, how'd you know that?" He went, "Well, we all know. We can hear you." I went, "Oh, right." And I just knew him from, around the corner. I didn't know him very well. And he said, "Well, we need a drummer for our band. Do you want to be in our band?" And I went, "Oh, yeah, I want to be in a band for sure." And so I thought he said to me, "Well, come over and do our first practice." Probably what he was saying was come and do an audition, but I didn't really think of it like that. So I went over to the main guy's house. So I met Tom, who was the main songwriter and rhythm guitarist and singer, Jim, who was lead guitar, Brent, who played bass, and we jammed a bit. And I guess through that process they said, "Well, yeah, okay, you're in." And then they said, "That's good, because we're recording our first album in 2 weeks."
So you've turned up at this house, first audition, or what wasn't really an audition but ended up being one, and they've gone, "Right, that's good, you're in. 2 weeks from now we want you to play all our songs in our coming album." Right.
It was literally 2 weeks. Maybe if you ask the other guys, they'll say maybe it wasn't 2 weeks, but I distinctly remember it being 2 weeks.
So how'd you feel about that being chucked into the deep end?
Panicked because these three guys, like as I said, like I'd played with, more than quite a few times with guys at school and stuff, but we played bits of songs, and these guys were all like a year younger than me, and all like 3 levels of musician above what I'd been playing with. Even though they were very slightly younger than me, they seemed like proper musicians. They had full songs. It was all thought out. They all had parts. It was all original.
Yep,
it wasn't bits of songs that we could play and we didn't play this bit because we couldn't play it. They had a whole thing worked out, and they'd researched recording studios. They'd picked one and they were going in. And I thought, oh, geez. So probably the first of many instances of me playing where I had a bit of imposter syndrome. I went, can I really do this? But the singer gave me a very unique method of getting ready for those things.
Yeah. So imagine if you hadn't done that, right, and you wouldn't have had the opportunity in the first place. Maybe you wouldn't have played in as many bands as you have over your time.
I probably would have kept playing in my bedroom and occasionally played a bit of a Slayer song, and that's it.
So before we get into the studio and what you did prepare for that, you mentioned he gave you a particular thing to do to get yourself ready for it. I'm interested now. I want to know what that was.
Well, I've still got a copy of this, actually. It was amazing that this guy was 16 and a bit, so actually not much older than my youngest boy who you met earlier, and younger than my oldest boy. But he was such an organised, I thought, professional musician that he goes, no worries, I've prepared this for you. And he gave me a cassette, which was him talking about each song, what he wanted, sort of a little bit of how he'd thought about it, what the song was about, the sort of vibe he was going for. Sometimes some very direct, you won't play on this song, but I'm going to tell you it, show it to you. And then he would play the song, either just him on acoustic guitar and singing, or he'd recorded it with the bassist and then they cut that into the cassette. So I had to listen to this whole thing with his commentary and apologising, sorry, I think we left out a verse there and this sort of song. I just went, this is a 16-year-old school kid. This is unbelievable. What have I stumbled into here?
Yeah, that's pretty well organised, isn't it?
Yeah,
I mean, there's bands these days that don't go half to that.
No.
To half organise it and actually structure it and do a synopsis for a session musician or someone coming in to help.
And I think as we talk about other things I've played in, that experience was a huge positive, because we'll talk about how I approached it, but probably a negative, because I expected being in a band was always like that. Collaborative, helpful, everyone wanted your success. The guy who was running the band, the songwriter, he cared about you, a 16-year-old caring about me. But I felt like he wanted me to succeed, and he wanted to help me. And it wasn't always that collaborative.
And it never is,
and
mate.
It never is, right? So, this is great. This is what being in a band's like. Everyone loves you. I go, oh, right.
All right, so you get to this studio, right? It's 2 weeks out. How many songs did you just lay down? How did you do that in 2 weeks? Tell me about the process.
Well, because there was hardly any time, and they'd rehearsed loads, but all without me. So there were no drum parts. There were some very rudimentary ideas of, here I want you to do like an offbeat hi-hat. I don't play reggae. I want to be Dave Lombardo. What are we talking about? So I listened to each of those songs, and I didn't know it at the time. But what I then did, because I'm a note taker, I'm a studious student, I wrote notes. And the way I wrote notes is, before I think about any parts, I'm going to have to learn the structure of these songs. So I did charts, even though I didn't know they were called charts at the time. But I wrote down, okay, the song starts with 4 of these, and then it has 4 of those, and I think I'll come in here, and then it has 8 of these, and then it's a different part, and I wrote all that down, at least in rudimentary fashion.
So even back then, you were using your ear and your intuition to come up with the structure of the drum part for a song that you'd just been learning.
So I had to learn structure first, and then immediately go, well, what am I going to play over this? And I'd test a few things. I'd put it on my headphones, and I'd play them through. And then I guess the moment of, truth is, we had a rehearsal and I had to play to the songs.
Stand up or drown, mate.
And I again thinking, it's hard to be intimidated by such lovely people, but I was a bit, because I thought, I think these guys are a lot better than me. So I had to play them what I prepared, and they didn't say no to any. So I thought, that must be okay. I'll do that.
Well, you must have done something right, mate. And so you mentioned to me earlier it was a studio called Crystal Clear Studios. Does that still exist? I don't know whether it does or it doesn't.
I don't think it does. What that was is an independent guy. I think I still remember his name, Dave. I want to say Tobin or Dave Tozer. Dave Tozer. And that was in his double garage in like Pennant Hills or Cherrybrook or something. And so he ran that as a full-time studio, but only on the weekends. So he had another job, and he worked 7 days a week, 12 hours, 15 hours a day. And so we had a Saturday and a Sunday and a Saturday and a Sunday. So the idea was, well, of course, we'll just go in as 16 to 18-year-olds, one of us who's known the songs for 2 weeks, and we'll just record the entire album and mix it in 4 sort of 12-hour sessions. You go, okay, in we go. Let's do it.
And how did that work out for you?
Not entirely perfectly. I guess a huge lesson for me, because I'd never been in a studio before, is I just turned up with my drums. And they were such a higgle. They weren't the original kit that I'd bought, which was, snares on tennis rackets and stuff. I had a different kit. It was still a bit of an amalgamation. And it was such a weird amalgamation that because we recorded with a different place that he showed me his studio photos, and he still had a picture of my kit, because he had to tune all my drums for me, set them all up slightly differently. I hadn't even tuned my drums. I didn't know. Well,
didn't know you had to, right?
Didn't know you had to. Well, the skin's solid, I'll play it. He goes, no. So we spent quite a few hours initially, ate into a lot of time. He tuned them all, we set them up. But then you spend, with acoustic drum miking, you spend hours getting a sound. The snare's rattling, so we'll put a bit of toilet paper on it. And
I understand that entirely, because I know it took my son's band Aphrodisiac and their drummer Zane, like it was an all-day session in recording studio just to lay down the acoustic drums with about 50 different mics. It's a big process.
So when you're going in and you go, well, we've got 4 days, we're going to play, 12 songs maybe. We're going to do all the parts, we're going to do them all perfectly, and we're going to mix it. That sounds unrealistic to start with, but then when you go, and we got to do the drums, realistically, probably you could spend at least half a day of those 4 days just on that.
All right, so you're in the studio. Do you remember what your favourite song was from that album, or is that too far gone now?
No, there were some really cool songs, I thought. There was a song called November 16, which was actually, I think, about a time the singer got beaten up. But you'd never know that. I really thought it's such mature songwriting. I didn't really know what the song was about, but it had it. Like I created a snare part and then a pause and then a snare part and then I went into I thought that was great. There was a song called Kirili, which had just amazing guitar solo, and that's actually an interesting lesson from that session as well. That when the guitarist Jim played that solo, when we listened to it back the first time, there was one note which was a real scream, and then it was like a double scream. And the engineer stopped it, and the band leader stopped it, and they both went, "Oh no, those notes are out of." And me and Jim looked at each other and went, "Those notes were the coolest." And they went, "But they're not in key. They're not like what you play normally."
So they're all off key. It sounds a bit.
And it wasn't
funky.
really off key, but he'd hit it slightly differently. And it made, to me and him, we just went, no way, that's got to stay. That's amazing. And that's an interesting lesson in recording music. It's not perfection, it's feel. And because we were so enthusiastic about it, those two went, "Oh, okay, yes, we'll keep it then if you like it." And then ages later, I don't want to speak for Jim, but ages later, he actually learnt how to play that. He goes, "I've been thinking so much about this. Like, I don't even know how I did that." He goes, "Oh, I did it like this." And that just became how he played it.
Wow. All right, so you've laid down that album. What do you ever do any other albums with the Silence before we move on?
Yeah.
I want to keep some of the mixing, mastering, recording stuff for another session, because I think it's really interesting the background you've got, and I want to go through that first before we get
Well,
into
actually, one other thing which was a favourite is, again, because the guy who ran the band was so creative, he turned up one morning and we, in circles of friends, there's little things that happen that you repeat forever. We've repeated this forever. He came with a cuckoo clock that he'd pulled off his parents' wall and said, "Dave, can you mic this up?" And Dave went,
"Why am I miking up a cuckoo clock?
What are you talking about?" Because there was a song that had, it was the theory of time or something. And so at the end, he had this idea, which actually worked brilliantly. Well, we'll just mic up my parents' cuckoo clock and play the cuckoo at the end. And Dave went, "Okay, I'll mic up the cuckoo clock." And then we went, "Oh, that worked really well." But where we got to is probably, with one day to go, Dave took the band leader outside, Tom, and went, "Tom, it's not enough. It's not enough time." So they were sort of unfinished demos. Maybe one other thing I'll say is, big lesson from that is, again, feeling imposter syndrome, feeling, gee, am I really good enough for this? Tom put down a guy guitar track to a song that, for reasons which I can't remember why, we all decided I'd be playing bongos on my toms. So normal drum toms, but I'd play bongos on them. Anyway, we did. I just couldn't play it. I was just out of time, and
because you're so used to using the sticks and not your hands.
But I was feeling more and more embarrassed and stressed, going, "Oh my God, I'm letting everyone down. We're spending too much time on this, or burning all this time." And the guy who ran the studio said, I think you can play this." And I thought, "Oh no, he's found out. They've all found." And he went, "Because I think the guitar's hugely out of time." I went, "Oh, is it not me?" And he
so
said,
you were trying to keep to a beat from a track that had been laid down by the guitarist that was out of time, and
but
that was never going to work.
I never thought that. I went straight to, it's my fault, and was really beating myself up internally. So he said, "Tom, you got to play to a click. You can't expect people to do this." So he made him play it to a click, and I played on top of it and went, "Oh, right, I can really play." So ever since then, I incorporated into my practice playing to a click, because I realised, you can't really, unless you're all playing together, you're not going to be able to lay tracks on top of each other if they're hugely out of time. If you're all together, you can be hugely out of time together, and that's feel. But not in a studio where you're sitting there silently with 5 people staring at you going, "Okay, do your part, and then I'm going to do my part."
All right, one more question about the Silence. What happened to the demos, mate? Did they ever get released? Are they hidden in the back catalogue?
No, I've still got them. I've got a little, not really a YouTube channel for doing anything, but for storing stuff, and I've got them up there, and I've also got a copy of the original Learn the Songs cassette that Tom gave me as well, which is really nice to hear. But we did one more recording session with them actually as well. So we did 4 days with that, and then one sort of Saturday evening, I got a call from my friend's older brother, who went on to become my friend, and said, "Oh, are you guys around tomorrow? Can you help my friend out?" "Oh, yeah, okay, we could." They want you to record a song because they're all doing an audio engineering course. And I said, "Okay." And so we all organised ourselves. We turned up, and it turned out to be Paradise Studios in the city, which isn't there anymore. But Cold Chisel recorded East there, In Excess recorded there, Midnight Oil recorded there, Icehouse recorded there, and all their stuff was up on the wall, gold records and stuff. Legendary stuff. And I went, and I was probably starting to get that balance of playing an instrument that was a bit more completely fully yourself, but also completely insecure. So I felt all right, actually. It was hugely intimidating, but exciting and inspiring as well. And the studio was huge, and it had glass walls, and it was amazing.
Yeah, it would be. It'd be an amazing experience having laying down recordings in the same studio that these legendary other artists had been before you. That would have been. I can see how that would have been a bit intimidating, but exciting, exhilarating, all smashed into one.
And I got into trouble again from the engineers because
Really?
I'd learnt. I go, okay, well, I got to tune my drums.
There's a pattern emerging here, Stuart, about you getting in trouble with studios,
yeah,
mate.
it is. I said, I know what to do now because I've done it. So that Saturday evening, I tuned all my drums properly, made sure I probably polished the cymbals and stuff, and I got in there, and they got really angry at me. And they goes, well, we're not going to be able to get a good sound. What are you doing? You know, you've wrecked it. And I looked, and a kick skin is usually a double skin, and I hadn't noticed, but the front skin was split. So it still worked, but it probably worked half of 1% well to be mic'd up. And, you know, that got me in trouble that time.
So what did the split do? It would have given it a rattle? It would have given it
probably
some sort
gave
of
it
noise?
a little bit of a rattle, and it probably gave it slightly less attack, I would say. So when you want to get the click out in a kick, probably there's a little bit less attack. Maybe it didn't resonate quite as well, but I bet you it would have been absolute edge case, right? But I still went, oh no, I did everything right and I still didn't do this. And so we did one song there, and we did it mostly live and did overdubs, and it went really well because we were actually more of a prepared band by that stage. But even then, I hadn't quite learnt the structure of this song properly. I distinctly remember finishing one section of the pattern too early, and then hearing, oh no, we're still going, and so covered it up, and then do to end. I go, no, I don't think anyone noticed, but I noticed. Went, oh no.
You would notice, wouldn't you? And probably some others would as well. I'd be interested to have a look at that YouTube channel later on, but I won't put that up.
No, we're going to do it now.
That's just between me and you, and the Oz Soundz Unleashed listeners can wait for that one for later. So after Silence, what happened? Silence obviously stopped at some point.
Yeah, it did. Look, we did. I think the only live performance we ever did was actually at their high school, because as I said, they were in a year below me. They all went to James Roos actually, so probably no surprise they were organised. And but I was allowed into James Roos as the external drummer, and we played in their assembly, and we played two songs, actually two of the ones I mentioned. I think we played November 16 and Kirili. So Jim got to do that screaming guitar solo in front of his whole school, and it went really well. And we're a band, man.
So it became a school rock king.
They would have for sure.
Yeah.
Like if you pull off an amazing guitar solo in front of your whole high school, I don't know about where you went to high school, but where I did, you would have been a legend for a little bit.
I reckon you would have been a legend too, but I didn't play guitar then, mate. I was, as I said, I was one of those brass guys. So it sounds to me like you spent a lot of time in the studio with them and live once. Is that about right?
I think so, yeah. I think a big lesson, and it reoccurred in the other things I did, is because we all wanted, you know, we were young, and I still think it now, we wanted to have artistic integrity. We wanted to do originals, no covers, you know, all our own stuff. I think we wanted to be too perfect. So we rehearsed and we rehearsed and we wrote and we wrote, and we were, in reality, we were totally ready to play, and we could have gone out and gigging all the time, but we just always thought we just need to be a bit better. So then we ended up all going to uni together, weirdly, all going to uni. And we arranged with the uni, we, at no money, but for free, we hired out a lecture theatre every Friday night. And that was our rehearsal room, a whole 300-person lecture theatre. So we set up down the bottom and we played. So every Friday night, people would drift in and then drift out. We weren't really giving a performance. We were literally just practicing.
But you had some live audience in an amphitheatre which probably had reasonable acoustics.
You could probably hear it everywhere, right? Yeah. So we probably had an audience that we never really considered, but we just kept rehearsing. And then eventually one day rehearsing in my bedroom, because we also did that with a PA for the singer.
Is that the same band that I've seen the video for?
No, that's a different.
You had your long hair and everything.
No, that's a different band.
Right, we'll get on to that one
That's
later.
Alcoholica. But anyway, we were playing, and three of us noticed that, you know, the lead, Tom, was started to play a different song in the middle of one of the songs, just noodling around. And we sort of stopped, and he kept noodling, and we went into the other room, and I don't think Tom's into it anymore. And we said, well, are you guys still into it? Yeah, we're still into it. Well, we'll keep going. We'll be a power trio. Drums, you know, guitar and bass, because the bassist was a very good singer. Okay, we'll do that. Cool. And then eventually Tom came back in, and we sort of said, you're not really into it, are you? You seem distracted. And he sort of said, oh, no, not really. And we said, well, we're going to keep playing. Do you mind? Like, we're going to keep going as a band? He said, no, that's cool.
So he just walked away from it?
He sort of just walked away from it. And so then the three of us formed the Grey Men, which then we did a bunch of other stuff.
So the Grey Men was born out of the silence, minus Tom.
We had 4, and then we went to 3 as the Grey Men. And for a couple of performances, we added a 4th of someone occasionally. So that was what we did next, the Grey Men.
All right. So why don't we move on then and talk about the Grey Men? You're still performing in the uni amphitheatre. You know, you've got some groupies coming in and out potentially. Tom's left the group. You've renamed, reformed, and you've made the Grey Men. And what sort of did you keep the same musical influence? Did you just change it up?
A little bit. I guess I'll say one quick thing, and anyone who's been in a band will probably know this, that the groupies really don't arrive. It's really guys that think they can play your instrument better than you to sort of check it out and say to their friends, I could play better.
I can do that.
That's really what it was usually. Well, we started, and we wanted to be all originals, and we probably wanted to be a little more metally and rock than sort of Dinosaur Junior-ish of the Silence. And so and Brent, the bassist and singer, was the main songwriter, and he wrote some amazing songs. We're pretty heavy, but also quite elaborate as well. So we were rehearsing those and getting going, and then we decided we'll just pause that for a second. We're going to form a Metallica cover band, and we're going to just try and play one uni band comp because we want to play these songs. So the 3 of us were in that band. We got one of the guys that I'd played with in high school, a guy called Trevor, and we needed a singer. And so in typical band fashion, this guy arrived that Trev knew. I can't remember his name. Nathan maybe. And he was just the singer for that band. So we just fully rehearsed a Metallica cover band show for about half an hour, only the first 4 albums.
Called the Grey Man, or is this a separate thing?
We called it Alcoholica.
Okay, because this is where Alcoholica comes in.
It's because that was one of Metallica's nicknames for themselves when they were potentially drinking a little bit too much. We weren't drinking at all, as it turned out, but we still called ourselves Alcoholica anyway because we thought it was cool that Metallica had.
Yeah, right.
So we really just got a set ready for just to play. The band comps, we use those in different things, but they weren't because we wanted to win a band comp. They were, well, we can go and play. They'll let us play. And
it was about the passion for the music, right? And to actually be on stage and just actually playing more than anything else, right? Just for the fun of it. And that's really important in the music industry.
So we got a set together. We taught Nathan where to sing and what to sing and how to introduce each song. And we fully rehearsed that in my bedroom. That's another one we had. Actual PA for the singer, full band practice, all in my bedroom. The neighbours, in retrospect, went through a little bit of hell. And I think we played Hit the Lights, For Whom the Bell Tolls. We played the first half of Master of Puppets. We played the last half of One, so only the fast bit of One.
Yep.
I did in retrospect, fairly, below average drum solo. We played Jump in the Fire, and we played Seek and Destroy. And we got up there and just... really, another interesting lesson is I thought I'd played really badly. Because I'd played before, but that one I thought I'd played really badly because I could not hear anything. Because the fallbacks, whatever you say.
Fallback speakers. Yep.
Were, and this I've never made this mistake again, they were all me. So all I could hear was me playing.
So I couldn't hear the vocals, couldn't hear guitar, nothing.
Just couldn't hear anything. But luckily I'd obsessed over Metallica so utterly that I knew every single millimetre of those songs. So I can't hear. I'll just play the songs and hope that they sort of follow me. So I thought when I came off, that's gone terribly.
Yep.
But of course we videoed it, being somewhat narcissistic and musicians. And we watched back and went, actually that went pretty well. That went all right. Maybe I should be just playing and they can follow me rather than them, me feeling like I needed to follow them all the time.
I think musos often do that though. You always think your performance is not as good as it actually is, and your audience thinks otherwise because they might not know any different, Two, it sounds good, seems to be in time. You know, you can pick up as
and it did have energy. It definitely had energy for sure.
Yeah.
It may not have been, you know, the greatest covers of it, but it felt good. So we played that once.
Did you win the band comp?
We didn't even hang around to find out because we thought we were too cool.
Yeah.
So we set up, let it rip,
packed up,
plug
it off.
Went home to my friend Alex's house, and we just watched the video of us playing over and over again. We didn't even wait to hear how we went. Apparently, we came second on that with an honourable mention for energy.
Fair enough, mate. Fair enough. So, how did the Grey Men then evolve?
Well, then we had a bunch of originals, and I some of which I have copies of, some of which I don't actually. But I remember the later songs, all the songs Brent wrote, and Jim contributed to, and I helped sort of, you know, one song was about a 10-minute song that we just created through a jam one day at my house. Other things Brent really wrote. I remember thinking, wow, these are really evolving into really mature, well thought through, like what a band we are. And so we wanted to be better, so we kept rehearsing, and we kept writing songs, and we kept rehearsing more and more, and played a couple of band comps and didn't really do much else, which we should have. And then I was going overseas, sort of backpacking, and we said, okay, I'll do that. I'm not sure when I'll be back. But then Brent started doing an SAE qualification, which is an audio engineering qualification.
Yeah, I know about it.
Yeah. And they had some cool studios in the city. They had at least 2 recording studios. And I think I rang Jim up maybe when I was away. I was like in Wales or something, backpacking, and said, oh, yeah, hey, how you going? And he said, oh, Brent's got this studio time. We got all this studio time. And I said, well, I've got to come back.
Got to come back, yeah. I'm missing out. Yeah.
I said, well, I can't.
Without me.
There's no way you can do that. So I literally did. I cut the trip short. I came home, and we ended up over some of Brent's things, recording for other students. We probably did 10, 12, maybe more days of recording time, sometimes on the weekends, sometimes after work, because I had a corporate IT job then. One time just they started in the afternoon, and then we went all the way through the night, and I just then went to my corporate IT job after doing all that.
What year is this for doing this in?
Maybe that was 96, 97. So we did lots of that, and then we were ready. We had demos. We were ready to go, and then Brent sort of, I think, and this is another common theme. I think because I wanted it so much, and Jim wanted it so much. If anyone didn't, we wanted them to want it as much as us. Yeah. And I think we strangled the fun out of it for Brent. I think the pressure of writing the songs and, you know, rehearsing and all that. So I think it just wasn't.
So you thought you were going somewhere, and you really wanted to achieve what your goals were. You wanted to be on stage.
Come on, man, we got to do it. You know, and I think it.
And Brent wasn't feeling it.
Yeah, I don't want to speak for him, but I think we strangled the fun out of it.
Yeah, right. I think that happens a lot with some bands too, right? You know, they spend so much time writing originals, they spend so much time getting in the studio. There's a little bit, not animosity, but bit grating on each other because you spend so much time together in small spaces, and you know, you've got some sort of creativity, you know, blockage, or someone wants something particular and the other person doesn't want it. And that's one of these things that happens with all bands, right?
Yeah, for sure.
With that happening, how did you get through that? How did you get past that? Is there any tips and tricks for the listeners?
Yeah, and I'll talk about the next band as well. I think in the very first one, in the Silence, I think because Tom was the band leader and he was such a chilled, artistic dude, you could maybe I can only speak for myself. I could never get upset if he told me he wanted me to play something else, because he was just such a nice guy, and it felt so collaborative. And then the Grey Man, we were still very friendly with each other and genuine friends. You know, we'd spend time with each other outside the band. I think, how did we get over it? I think we didn't handle it as well as we could have. I think at times we probably made Brent feel put upon, and like never meant to. But I think, and again, I don't want to speak for other people, but I think our love of let's go, and my love of come on, why doesn't everyone want it as much as me? And let's do another take, let's rehearse longer, And I think the fact we got into that cycle again and again, as it turned out, there was never any outcome. So because we weren't turning that into, well, let's go play, let's go gig, let's practice live, which bands do, it just became a cycle of stress and pressure to practice more and write more songs and be better and better. We should have turned that energy into playing, and then talked about, well, how are we gonna do this? And then the next experience was us on the other end of that. And that
I was actually going to ask that question, because it sounds to me, again, you spent a lot of time writing it in the studio and not much actually playing in front of live audiences. So maybe that would have helped if you'd have done more of that.
Because then your focus is on the audience rather than each other. Because if you're just constantly rehearsing, it's only in that band, it's only the three of you, right? So if there's a mistake, it's like, why'd you make that mistake? That wasn't a mistake, that was your mistake. And even though it sounds weird that there's pressure with just three of you in a room, everybody who plays an instrument at a level good enough to play in a band anyway, right? You've got to be able to play okay to do that. Is a, I think I said it earlier, is a constant swirling mess of complete ego and bravado about how good they are and wanting to show off, but also at the same time, totally insecure, and always questioning, am I good enough? Are they going to like this? And the combination of that together, and then being teenage boys or 22-year-old boys, that it creates issues.
I definitely want to hold all the recording tips and tricks for another podcast, because we're going down into the depths here on your musical background, and I'm more interested in that, and we will get to that. So don't worry, listeners, we'll get Stu back on and talk more about the actual issues with studio recording and mixing, mastering. But so getting back to you've got the band, the Grey Men. Brent's kind of gone off to the side, and it's just you and Jim left, right?
Yeah, Brent really said to us one day in rehearsal, look, I'm feeling a bit put upon here. It's no longer fun, so I'm not going to keep doing it. I was devastated, genuinely devastated. God, we've lost this band we've spent so much time on. So then it was just me and Jim. Well, do you want to keep playing? I want to keep playing. Yeah. So we'd rehearse a lot together. But then, as luck turned out, Jim worked with a guy who was a rhythm guitarist and singer who had a bassist, and they needed a drummer and a lead guitarist. Well, that's
match made in heaven, mate.
We're on, and they were super passionate. They were ready to go. They had all these plans. So that was Page 6. So then the
band name was called Page 6.
Page 6. I can't quite remember how that happened, but it did. So that was Page 6, and the guy that wrote all the songs, as it turned out, was somewhat less collaborative and somewhat more Noel Gallagher, and that was a very different experience. Yeah,
and I think that happens sometimes too, where you got one particularly creative person who wants it all their own way and won't listen to reason.
Yeah, and he again, without getting too philosophical, he choked the fun out of it a bit
for you guys.
Yeah,
even though you guys were driven and he choked, so it was kind of the flip side, wasn't it?
Yeah, it made me think, oh gee, have I done this to other people? Because I'm feeling pretty bad about this, actually.
Yeah, right, okay.
I mean, one example, the collaborativeness of the silence and then the other things. The bassist in that band, Page 6, was a lovely guy who we all got on with. He was like one of the band leader's good friends. And we turned up to rehearsal one day, Jim and I, and he wasn't there. And another guy was there. So
he just didn't turn up and they'd replaced him? Or?
He didn't get told he was replaced.
Oh, right.
We didn't get told he was replaced. We just turned up and there was a completely different guy there.
So the rhythm guitarist that had joined you to create Page 6 just see you later, Mr. Bassist, didn't even say anything, he just dragged another one.
Didn't even tell the bassist. And years later, Jim happened to get in touch with the bassist, and he was angry at us all still for kicking him out of the band. And Jim had to say, well, we didn't even
Didn't
know.
know about
We
it.
didn't even know. Like, he goes, oh, you guys didn't think I was good enough. You know, we did all this stuff together, and I went, no, we didn't know. So there was a new bassist. And so that was another band where we rehearsed a lot, wrote a lot of songs. We didn't write songs. We got told what to play.
Yeah.
You know, we did some studio time. We did a party or two, and yeah. So
Not much in terms of local venue gigging or anything like that again. Yeah.
No, and the aim was, okay, we'll do some demos, and then we ended up selecting, sort of at my recommendation, which I ended up regretting, a recording studio called Warehouse Studios in Rydalmere, which was now owned by Dave Tozer, that had owned Crystal Clear years before.
Right.
Because Jim and I had recorded with him. It wasn't expensive compared to other things. We'll go here. So it's okay, we'll go here. And that's another example of, right, we'll get in, right, we're ready to go. We're doing 2 songs, demo, it's going to be great. And okay, first, we're going to spend 5 hours with me hitting drums to get a drum sound. And by the end of that, it was literally 5 hours. I was completely exhausted. The rest of the band were completely bored. And then we go, right, we got a drum sound. Okay, let's play. And okay, first thing, Stewart, you got to do your drum takes. Well,
Didn't you just do the drum takes in the 5 hours, or was it just
no,
the mic
you're
up?
literally just hitting to do mics.
Right, okay.
And to get a sound. And so then I had to do my 2 takes, which I'm very proud to say, I was a one-take wonder, did it. Was very proud of myself. But then by that stage, it was like 6 hours into an 8-hour session. The rest of the band were bored, and so they had to sort of, you know, to get ready. Okay. So we sort of got some of it done. But then we were going to finish the session off in, again, an after-work session. So I turned up in my suit and corporate stuff. I wasn't playing because I'd done my takes, but I was in the band. So I walked in and I saw Dave Tozer, the guy that owned it, sort of rolling his eyes and sort of go, you know, sort it out. Me sort it
So
out.
that just arrived. You've got a problem already. Yeah.
What are we doing? What are we doing here? And so I walked in and I sort of walked around the corner and I found the singer sitting at the table with 9 empty beers in front of him, maybe 7, but certainly 7 empty beers, with his hands in the air saying, "I'm just not feeling it, man. I'm not feeling it." I went, "What? You're not feeling it? Like, can you?"
Not surprising after 7 or 9 beers.
Can you maybe feel it anyway? Like, what's the problem? He goes, "Oh, it's a bad sound. He can't get a good sound. I can't." And then that was, I go, okay, how am I going to sort this out? How's this? And it became, talking about how band dynamics can work, that became my fault because I'd recommended the studio because we'd worked with that guy before. So somehow that was...
Somehow you got blamed for it.
Somehow I got blamed for it.
7 to 9 beers.
And
You've
I'd
been
done
working
a
the
corporate
job.
IT job and turned up completely sober on a Tuesday night, but it was my fault. I go, so another lesson there is you gotta feel it. If you're not feeling it, you got to be able to perform anyway. You got to be able to pretend at least. And
actually, that's a really good point though, isn't it? Because you book a gig, you book it months in advance. If you're live on stage or in a studio or whatever, and you're not feeling it, you've got to just stump up and do it, right?
You got to feel it. You got to get it going. And I would recommend 7 beers is not necessarily the way to feel it. 7 beers can make you feel like you're feeling it, but the audience can go, "You seem really drunk and not able to play properly."
I could imagine that.
So we only really got mostly finished demos out of that. Still got my good drum tracks, of course.
Yeah.
But
so you've still got all these mostly done seven beers demos?
Yeah, I've still got that. You can hear him singing, but he wrote amazing pop songs, rock songs, amazing. But he then started micromanaging us, I think in respect, maybe like we did to others that we played with. And I felt like there's... he would tell Jim how the solo needed to go and not let him write the solo.
So there's this whole lack of allowing people to express creatively the thing that they're best at it.
Yeah.
And being that collaborative as opposed to, I want it done this way, it's my song, yada, yada, yada.
He was, I would describe him as a Noel Gallagher approach, if you've ever read anything about Oasis, where Noel Gallagher wrote the songs.
Not really a fan of Oasis, to be honest with you, mate.
But the songwriting and the approach is a really bands have this approach,
Yep.
or they have other approaches.
approaches,
And the Noel
yeah.
Gallagher approach, he wrote all the songs, he wrote all the parts, he wrote the vocals, he wrote the vocal melody. He recorded a demo of him playing every single track except a drum machine. He sang it, and he turned up and he said, "Hello, band. Here's your song. They're your parts. That's what you need to do."
Yeah, right.
No question. That was the Page Six experience.
Yeah, I can appreciate, especially with Oasis, the brilliant band. Not really my style, but you got to appreciate the craft, and I still think that's the same in any corporate job as well, right?
Yeah,
you got to work as collaboratively as part of a team. You can't just have one rule the roost. It's not a dictatorship in a band.
No, and Noel Gallagher, again, I'm not advocating this, but it's one path bands can go on, right? He gave an interview that I always remember where he said, "The rest of the bands say I bullied them. The rest of the band said I bullied them." And he said, "I did bully them all the way to 3 sold-out nights at Wembley." So
That's very true.
What more do they want? These kids would have been pushing shopping trolleys around if it wasn't for me. So is that bad or is that good? And I went, oh, yeah, okay. But when you're on the receiving end of it, it doesn't feel good.
So did you guys at Page Six end up playing live much at all?
No, we played a party at the singer's house, which was mainly girlfriends and a couple of other people. Like a piano player turned up with a set of keyboards for 2 hours, I remember. I never knew his name. I played with him for 2 hours. He packed up leaving, packed up left, never met him again. We did have an Asian tour booked.
Right.
And
Asian tour?
The whole tour
Yeah.
was ready, apparently. The singer had told us, "We're going to do an Asian tour. I've spoken to my uncle. He can arrange it all. He lives in Bangkok or something. We're on." So I said, "All right, I'll resign from my job. Man, of course we're going on an Asian tour. This is going to be fantastic." And, I just before I did that, I thought I'll just check, just where are we playing? What have we booked? Oh, we're going to have all this stuff. But what are we? And it turned out the Asian tour was actually us backpacking around, knocking on doors, seeing if we could play in bars, because he'd done that apparently 18 months ago I said, "Well, I play drums."
So no prior planning. You're going to chuck all the drum kit on your back and walk around Bangkok with it?
No prior it wasn't just Bangkok. It was Philippines. It was Malaysia. There was the whole thing.
Right.
I thought, well, okay, you could have told me that just before I resigned for the Asian
Had
tour.
you actually resigned?
No, I hadn't. But I had.
Luckily for you.
I had in my mind said, "Well, of course I'll resign for the Asian tour, of course." And so that didn't happen much either.
Yeah, right. So that's quite a few bands, right? You've
Yeah,
gone through the
I
Silence,
suppose, yeah.
you've gone into the Grey Men, has morphed into Page Six. You and Jim are still working together, and I understand you're still working together.
Yeah,
today,
we are
right?
again now. Yeah,
And maybe one day we'll get Jim on here.
yeah.
Talk about it. But what was the other? Did you get into any other bands since then, or did it kind of just stop?
Yeah, there was other people I jammed with. Things that, like, one of my friend's older brothers, who became my friend, was a guitar teacher, and we played together a bit, and we weren't in a band together, but you jam with someone a few times and you think, oh, should we do something? There was another guitarist. But that first experience with the Silence really impacted me, because I always said to myself, I only want to play originals. I only want to play originals. I'm not going to go and be in a cover band. If people want to do that, I have no disrespect or anything for that. But just personally, I thought, I don't want to spend all my time learning to play someone else's song that doesn't sound quite as good as when they played it. So I always wanted to play originals. And that experience with the Silence, it impacted me, because I didn't want to be in a band with strangers just for the sake of being in a band, which is completely impractical. But I wanted to be in a band with people I liked and were sort of friends with. So after, Silence, Grey Man, a little bit of Alcoholica, some other things, Page Six, by that stage I'd maybe learnt 30, 40 original songs, maybe more. A little set for Alcoholica, of Metallica covers. I think we did in one thing with Grey Man, we did a Stones song, but in a bit of a rock style.
Any music videos to go with some of these demos, mate? You did a few of those?
I think most of them. So I'd learnt 30 or 40 originals, some covers. I'd had maybe, I'm probably not exaggerating to say 15 or 20 days studio time as well, and nothing had happened. And we still hadn't really played live a lot in all these bands, and I wasn't thinking I have to quote unquote make it. All I wanted to do was play all the time in a band, and after all that effort, nothing had really happened. So I was pretty despondent, if I'm honest. So I ended up then going overseas again in, what was that, 98? And then I ended up living in England for, 2-3 years, met my now wife, all that sort of stuff. Jim moved interstate. And so that was it for a while. And I never thought of myself as a former drummer. I always thought of myself as a drummer, and I found times to play. And but in terms of trying to be in a regularly rehearsing band, that was sort of it.
Okay, so that was kind of it, and it's not restarted again. I know you do a bit.
Now I've done a bunch of
and whatever.
Yeah, I did another recording project with the guys from the Grey Man. I did another which we haven't released yet, which I'd like to. I did a recording project with a friend of mine that I went to primary school with, which we did release as the Broke Down Dukes on Spotify and all good.
So another band, the Broke Down Dukes.
Oh yeah, that's another band. I forgot that.
Tell me a little bit about that one, because I'm going to leave all the recording stuff
to
another podcast, because we're already almost an hour in, mate, and we could talk for hours.
Yeah,
I'm
we
sure.
could go for days. Well, I won't go into the weeds of that one, but that was. Remember, I said right at the start, like I had 40 Stones albums.
Yep.
And a couple of new kids who happened to be twins, but they were individuals, had turned up to our primary school in about year 3, so we're about 9 years old. And I was friendly with both of them, but one of them, Brendan, came over to my house. Our parents had organised it, and it wasn't going that well. Even though we were 9, we were sort of going, oh, this guy's all right, and we're a bit of a loose end. And he said, do you like any music? Do you want to listen to some music? And I'd never admitted to anyone my age that I loved the Stones, because I just thought this is a 60s band, like they're going to think I'm weird. And I said, well, I do like one band. And
I like the Beatles. I like the Stones.
And I showed him my collection of 40 tapes, and he went, I like the Stones too. I went, and we've been friends ever since.
That's awesome.
And so that is who I did the Broke Down Dukes with. And he again, I don't want to speak for other people, he can speak for himself, but he lived in England for a long time, and for a period he was a professional blues guitarist.
Very cool.
And singer, and so we ended up doing Broke Down Dukes as a recording project, because it's much more difficult these days to get a whole band together and rehearse, and so we did it as a recording project.
So what would you say your main genre has been? Has it been metal, rock? Have you played other styles? So you mentioned your mate was a blues guitarist. Have you soireed into the jazz realm, mate?
No, I can't stand jazz.
Okay.
No, I genuinely can't stand it. Full respect to everyone that does and likes to play it, but I can't stand it. I always wanted to play. I started wanting to play Justice for All, the album, which is the most complicated.
Metallica, mate. Metallica's the basis of everything, isn't it, for you?
I think the Stones is the basis for me starting of being obsessed with music. Metallica, though, that is what I want to play that. And so I've over-engineered and overplayed a number of songs because I'm trying to play Justice for All drums over a blues rock song or something, and it doesn't always work.
All right. So it's clear from our discussions, both prior to the podcast and others, is that Metallica is like number one. And I'm holding here, for those who can't see it, I will put a photo of us on our social media, but it's a 5B, probably hickory, drumstick, actually badged with Metallica.
It is.
Has a bit of like tennis tape or something or other on the stick.
Tennis handle tape you used to put on.
And there's a story that goes with this, because this was owned by Metallica's drummer, Lars Ulrich.
This was Lars's stick. It came from literally Lars's hand.
You got to tell us the story about it.
Well, let me touch it a little bit, and now I'll put it down because I don't want to wreck it. I'm gonna take you back for a couple of minutes if you've got a couple of minutes on this.
Absolutely. I think listeners would be interested, and I am.
So I started listening to Metallica when they just put out Justice for All in 1988, and then you go backwards, right? So you go Master of Puppets, Ride the Lightning, Kill 'Em All, and you know. But then in 1989, we found out they were coming to Australia for the first time ever on the Damaged Justice tour, which was mind blowing. So I found my friend Pete, who was in my year and big into them as well. Quite a few of us were. I said, Pete, we got to go. We got to go. And he said, of course we got to go. Of course, we're going for sure. I said, we're going, Pete.
Well, why wouldn't you, right?
Why wouldn't you, right? So he said, I'll do you one better. My older brother and all his friends are going. They're buying tickets. So I'll organise for them to buy tickets, and we'll go with them because they're a bit older than us, and they'll like protect us. I was, this is amazing. Okay, great. You know. So we went home, came to school the next day, and went, it's bad news. I went, well, what do you mean? He said, Tom says we're not allowed to go. What do you mean Tom says we're not allowed to go? Now, I'd underestimated that Pete was from a Greek family. And so when the oldest brother says you can't do something,
that's it.
That's it. So in Pete's mind, well, we're not allowed to go because Tom said, okay, Pete.
So it's over.
It's over. We're not going. And I said, well, Tom's not telling me what to do. Like, why? And he said, look, Tom said there's going to be riots. There's going to be all sorts of stuff. Police are going to come. It's going to be too dangerous. We're too young. We're not like 9 years old. So we're not allowed to go. And I thought, well, I'm going to go by myself. I don't care if Tom says I'm not allowed to go. But what Tom said got into my head. And I said, maybe it is really dangerous. Maybe I was silly, but I said, okay, maybe I won't go. So we didn't go. Tom and all his friends went. And the next day at school, John, who's the guy I first played, drums on a box with in his house, he came to school the next day, unable to speak. I said, well, what's wrong? He said, I saw Metallica last night. So what do you mean? What do you mean you saw Metallica? He goes, yeah, I went with Pete's brother. I went, you Pete, why did he take John and not you and not me? Why was John allowed to go? He said, well, John was really into him. I said, well, so were we. And my friend Brendan that I mentioned earlier, he ended up not in contact at the time with it, but he ended up going. And if you talk to him, he says it was the greatest thing I've ever seen. John, everyone said, greatest thing ever seen. And I went, I cannot believe I did not go and see
So
Metallica.
You didn't get to go and see Metallica.
So I didn't see the Damaged Justice tour.
Right.
Now, the police did come a little bit. They did. The fans did block off Anzac Parade with a bit of fire, and the riot horses did come. But, so Tom wasn't completely wrong. He was probably spot on. But I could have stood in the background and not been impacted. No one got shot or anything. They cleared off Anzac Parade. Greatest thing ever. So I thought, I still think of that I miss them once a year now. I can't believe I did that. So then, when they were on the Black Album tour, which I was, 50-50 on that album, a little bit upset about selling out, but okay. But they were coming here at the end of the Black Album tour in 1993, 2.5-year tour, all that sort of stuff, longer actually, I think. I said, well, I am not missing out this time. I don't care what happens. So I and at least two other guys, Alex and Ashley, said to make sure we're not going to miss out, we will sleep out at Macquarie Centre in the car park for not one but 2 nights to make sure that we get tickets. And we did. The first night we slept out with a bunch of Paul McCartney fans to get tickets, but we were first in line. So we slept in a car, and ironically, I had all the money for Pete and his brother Tom and his brother's friends to buy tickets for them. So we bought tickets to all 3 shows that they did. But we weren't silly. We did the floor for 1 night only. So we went the first night, we were in a seat, okay, that's great fun. Then the second night, when we were on the floor, we said, right, we're not missing out here. So we got there extremely early, and we queued up at the door, the gate, I guess, to get into where it was.
Yep.
We must have been there for like 2 hours. They opened the gate, door to the studio, the venue.
Yep.
And we ran to the front rail, and we held on to the front rail as the rest of the people
So the stage is literally
assembled.
2 meters away from you.
All it was the rail, a walkway where the security guards could go, and then the stage, right? So we probably at a push with real stretching could have touched them. And we got there maybe, I'm probably not exaggerating here, maybe 7 hours before Metallica were going to play. So then we stood there for 2 hours, which was exhausting. And then the backup band, which I think was Caius, came on. And everyone surged. So for 2 hours, we'd spent making sure no one could get us off that front rail, because people would try. They'd try and push you in. You go, no, we're staying at the rail.
Yeah.
And then Caius came on as the backup band, surged forward, getting crushed against the rail, using all your strength to
hold yourself off the rail.
To not die.
Yeah.
And we watched Caius, and they were like 40 minutes. And then there was a pause of about 60 minutes before Metallica came on. Even stronger pressure from behind. Everyone was trying to get forward before Metallica started. I hadn't been to the toilet in 4 hours. I was sweating unbelievably. Metallica came on, and I've not experienced, I guess, physical fear quite like that.
Wow, okay.
Because for about 10 seconds with the crush and you're against the rail, you just instinctively, your mind says, I'm going to die.
Yeah, right.
I cannot get it. I cannot fight off 4,000 people
behind you
pushing.
Yep.
But we did. So we lasted, they played almost 3 hours, and there were three of us, Ashley, Alex and I. At some point, Ashley, he got a bad angle or something, and so all you had to do is put your hand up, and the security guys would just pull you out. So they pulled him over the rail.
Yeah, right.
And then it was just me and Alex at the front, and we'd lasted whole show.
The whole thing. Yep. So you're about 10 hours in here now.
Completely exhausted. At one point, I remember Alex had a shirt or a singlet on under his shirt. He just really ripped it off to try and get himself a little cooler. We hadn't had a drop of water, hadn't had a rest in hours, and we had fought against the people behind us for 5 or 6 hours. And then it's over. And then Lars comes out with sort of 2 handfuls of sticks and is walking around and is trying to essentially find the most enthusiastic fan.
Yep.
At this point, I'm probably embarrassed to say I was screaming like a girl in 1962 when the Beatles, were playing live.
I can actually imagine you doing that too.
I was. We go, Lars, and I think I was screaming all sorts of silly stuff like, I play drums because of you, and, a lot of embarrassing stuff.
Yep.
And he gave a few sticks to some people in the front row. And then he came right in front of me, and I locked eyes with him. And I go, Lars, I might have said I love you. I'm not sure. But
I'm sure you wouldn't have minded anyway,
in a heterosexual way. And he said, and he leant over to me, and my hand came up as far as it could go. There were about 20 other hands all competing, but he saw me.
Yeah.
And he touched the stick into my hand, and then he pulled it out.
Right.
And sort of smiled at me.
So he's toying with you.
Oh, no, Lars, screaming at him. And I reached even further. And when I thought I couldn't reach any further, I reached further. And I got my hand in front of everyone. And he brought the stick down into my hand and pulled it out again.
Yeah, right.
And sort of giggled and looked around at everyone. And then, it was just an absolute frenzy by now. Hand out even further. Thought I was going to fall over the rail, screaming, Lars. And he reached out and he put the stick right into the hand of Alex.
So the bloke you were with?
My mate Alex.
Your mate Alex, yeah.
Because he was a little bit taller than me. That's why I think. I think Lars knew I was the bigger fan of him.
Yeah.
But Alex's hand was a little bit ahead.
Yeah,
Maybe
right.
I didn't look a fan enough. So Alex got the stick, and he immediately shoved it down his pants and put his shirt over it because we both knew what had happened.
Yeah.
Because someone had take it off us, and we, eventually the crowd left, and I've never experienced physical exhaustion like that. I had no liquid left in my body. It looked like and felt like I had gone in a pool with my jeans. I was completely exhausted. And we left, and as we were walking off, we found Ash. And Alex said, "You take the stick. Like, you play, you know." I said, "No, it's no hard feelings. Like, what am I going to do with a stick? Like, he gave it to you. You just keep it. It's a cool thing. You know, you got it. That's excellent." I wasn't upset or anything. I was a little bit upset with Lars, but I certainly wasn't upset with Alex. And over a couple of years, every time it had come up, Alex would say, just take it. Like, it's, you know, it doesn't mean anything to me. Like, it does. You were there. It was a cool thing.
So, right? You didn't actually get it for a couple of years.
So I didn't get it for ages. And then I can't remember how, but at some point, I think Alex just said, "Look, seriously, just take it now, because, you know, it's been sitting in my house, you know, just take it." So I did. I like to think Lars probably wanted always me to have it anyway. And Lars probably to this day
still laughs about it.
Thinks back and go, "I hope Stewart's got that stick now. I hope he does." And I do. But I don't want to touch it because I think he's tennis racket.
I feel like I've touched royalty today, mate, because I've had it in my hands, and thank you very much. It's the best experience ever. But it is a very cool thing. All right, look, you know, Stu, it's been an absolute pleasure having a chat to you today, mate, about your history in the bands and stuff that you've experienced. You know, we had to finalise it with the Metallica because I know you've got tickets, and I know that I've got tickets for my two boys and me going to Metallica in November in Sydney, mate.
Yes, of course.
So we'll definitely do it again. Maybe just this one time, Lars will give you the stick direct. But are you prepared to get into that mosh pit again? I'm not so sure.
I don't think physically I'm going to go and sit on a rail for 7 hours again or longer. I got a nice seat this time, and I'm quite looking forward.
Mate, it's been an absolute pleasure chatting to you about your musical background. We'll certainly do this again because I know you've got some more stories to tell around the recording stuff and some tips and tricks for our listeners. To our listeners, thanks for listening to podcast number 2. I hope you enjoyed it. We'll pop it up online as soon as we possibly can, and we'll certainly get Stuart back again.
Thank you, mate.